Hey everyone, for the final video in this chapter, we're going to be discussing the peoples of North America. Now, an important distinction to remember between cultures of North America compared to those in Central and South America is that North America did not have what we would define as civilization. Remember back in chapter 1, we went over the 7 characteristics of civilization? Okay, here's a list of them right now. We don't need to go through all of them right now, but just so, hopefully this will jog your memory a little bit. No peoples or no group in North America could check off all of the boxes to classify as a civilization. This is not to say, though, that these people lived as savage barbarians. They had rich histories of culture and art and religion, stories, all of that. So we're going to break down the peoples of North America by region, starting with the people of the Southwest. Now, these groups lived in what today is the southwestern region of the United States. So states like Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Southern California, places like that. All right, and the first North American group we'll discuss are the Hohokam. They are significant because they were the first North American group to develop farming. Perhaps as long ago as 300 BCE, the Hohokam began farming fields of corn and beans in the desert. Now, in order to do this, they developed irrigation systems of canals and ditches. These canals carried water as much as 10 miles in order to irrigate fields, and these techniques would be adopted by other groups, allowing them to thrive in the desert climate. One of the more prominent groups that you also find in this region were the Anasazi. They lived in what we call the Four Corners region. It's an area where Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah all meet in Four Corners, hence the name. The Anasazi are best known for their cliff dwellings. You see the picture of an excavation of an Anasazi dwelling. This is in New Mexico, I believe. They dug complexes of homes and buildings into the sides of cliffs for protections against raiders. They also built freestanding villages away from the cliffs, which the Spanish later called pueblos. Now, pueblos were made of clay. Move me out of the way here. All right, so they were dwellings that would be made out of clay, and the buildings were often connected to each other. The remains of Pueblo Bonita, what you see right here, they're still standing in New Mexico, and these types of dwellings became common among other people in the region, so much so that all of the different Native American groups of that region are often referred to as Pueblo Indians. But technically, you're referring to the dwellings, not the people themselves. Next, we're going to move on to the Eastern groups. All right, the first one to talk about here are the Hopewell people. The Hopewell Indians are from what today we refer to as the Midwest, mostly around the Ohio River Valley. Move me down here again. Oh. There I am. All right, so the Ohio Hopewell that you see right here, all right, here's Ohio, and then you got West Virginia and Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and so forth. Right, and the Ohio River actually runs the border there. That's mostly where you found these people. And they were known for their earthworks. Now, earthworks are large piles of dirt and then shaping them in various ways. Right, you look at here, those are not naturally formed hills. Those are actually man-made mounds. Some of them were burial mounds, others might have been used for defensive walls. And evidence of these earthworks can still be found around the Ohio Valley, hence the photograph that you're seeing right there. The Hopewells also showed evidence of extensive trade. You look at the map that I got here, it shows all of the different people that the Hopewells came into contact with, all the way down into the southern United States, up through the Great Lakes, and we know they came into contact because of archaeological digs in these mounds. Shark teeth from the Gulf of Mexico, copper from the Great Lakes, all that stuff has been found in the Hopewell mounds, signifying a far-reaching trade network. Another mound-building people were the Mississippians. Now, the Mississippians, obviously for which the river is named, were found along the river from the southeast all the way up into the Great Lakes. The Mississippi, if you're looking at the Hopewell map, it empties out here, where today would be actually here, New Orleans, and then runs all through here. All right, so all of those borders between the states, that's the Mississippi River, the largest river in the United States. And the Hopewells, they also were mound builders, but they built them bigger. They built them on a larger scale. You see the very large one here. Some of these mounds became the outlines of large settlements, such as the one you see here, which is Cahokia. It is in present-day Illinois, and Cahokia, besides the big one here, has over 120 mounds and may have housed as many as 20,000 people. Now, lastly, among the eastern groups were the Iroquois. And the Iroquois, it's important to remember, they are not a single people, but rather a shared language group. You've got a number of different Iroquois groups. The purple shaded region here on the map are all Iroquois-speaking people. You've got the ones in New York State, such as Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca, even the Wenner here, but then you've also got Erie, Susquehanna, down in Pennsylvania. Over here, these the kind of the pink shaded area, that's a different language group. So all the purple, that is Iroquois. You've also, got a lot of the like smaller subgroups within there as well. And they shared a common root language and had similar cultural beliefs. Among them, a game that they refer to as Bagataway or Tawartan, depending on the individual group. And we refer to this game as lacrosse. All right, lacrosse was played, let me erase this stuff. You see from the picture here, some early traditional lacrosse sticks. Some look a little bit more similar to modern day ones. Actually, this one here is a modern day one. You look at some of them were really just sticks with like a very small ring around them. Other ones that look, kind of with the large hook and the large netting that you see. Depending on where it was played, it wasn't just played here in the United States, but what would it be today be Canada. It was played by indigenous people all throughout the region. And it was not only a sport for them, but it was a form of ceremonial combat in a way. It was a way of celebrating the creator, which is why the Iroquois refer to it to this day as a creator's game, and it still holds a high place of importance among the Iroquois people today. The Iroquois still compete internationally, international lacrosse events as their own nation. All right, so Iroquois people would not compete for the United States or Canada. They would compete for the Iroquois national team because it has such a important significance to them and their culture. So while there were several cultural similarities, the Iroquois did not all view themselves as being the same people. Fighting among them was fairly common, sometimes for very violent lacrosse games as well. Now, according to Iroquois tradition, a prophet or a holy man urged the different groups to stop fighting, and they formed what became known as the Iroquois League. Now, this was an alliance of the 5 major Iroquois groups. You have the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, and the Seneca. Onondaga is central, more of like Syracuse area. Seneca, very prominent here in western New York. And this became known as the 5 Nations. It was a loosely organized alliance, but was still the best organized political system in North America. Member nations governed their own villages, but they would meet jointly to discuss big issues. And that's why the Iroquois flag has the 5 symbols here, right? 4 squares and then the arrowhead in the middle signifying the Onondaga. Right, 4 being the center of everything. Right, but those 5 symbols represent the 5 nations, the 5 original nations of the Iroquois League or the Iroquois Confederacy. All right, now one other group in North America to mention lived in the far north. In the Arctic and subarctic regions lived several groups, and among them were the Inuit, also referred to as the Eskimo. The Inuit adapted to a very harsh living environment to live up here in northern Canada, even up into what used to, Greenland and places like that, Alaska, all up and around the Arctic Circle. It is very, very cold. Resources can be very scarce. They lived in small bands of hunting and fishing groups. They mostly hunted seals, from which they used everything as a resource besides the meat for food. Skins were used for clothing, bones for tools, oil for cooking. And they would build houses from ice and snow, and we refer to these houses as igloos. Right? Not a lot of wood up there, so it's not like they could cut down a lot of trees, so you make do. They were able to build shelter out of the ice and snow itself. They would also develop transportation methods that had to be somewhat innovative in order to get by in this harsh climate. Kayaks used to transport on the water, also used for fishing and for occasionally hunting the seals, and then dog sleds in order to get across the snow and the ice. So the Inuits are a great example of how humans adapt both the environment to themselves and come up with different innovations to adapt to an environment where you wouldn't think it would be very easy for humans to survive. All right, so that's a quick overview over the people of North America, and it also wraps things up for this chapter.